Before we go back to music, there's one more exercise I would like to discuss, and that is articulations. What I normally do is combine articulations with scale practice. And if you've been listening to me before, you know that I don't use the term scale lightly. It's really tonality practice, but learning the various scales and modes of the scale, like when we improvised in C major earlier. This is a little more, not a little more, it's a lot more exercise-like, so that we can actually just train the scales in seconds and thirds, later in fourths, later in fifths, so that we can play the scales and freely in the tonalities and all the modes. And that we start with the major and then later use the melodic minor. We can also use other scales and modes, the chromatic scale, of course, the whole tone scale, as well as the diminished scale. So this is time to do some tonality research, and make sure, if you're a trombone player, it's very important at this point to pay attention to the positions that you're using, so that you're using the most efficient and effective slide positions. We want to be looking this way when we're playing the scale as much as possible, and avoid this kind of motion. Now, there's certain combinations of notes where we can't avoid it. Okay. There's sometimes where we have to play this kind of movement, and so we have to learn how to play as smoothly as possible, even though we're using a very animated motion. But most of the time, in the middle to upper register, we don't need to be moving much more than this, or this kind of thing. Now, there's another video on slide technique, but just to review quickly, first there's the thumb and the fine tuning. The thumb is the captain. The thumb and two fingers are connected and attached almost. They don't let go of the bottom part of the slide. We have the thumb, then wrist. If we're in an inner position like first or second and we're going out, the arm can sort of direct us, or shoulder and arm can help us by being prepared for that movement. If we're coming on from the outer positions to the inner, then the thumb is leading and we're using this as much as possible. We have it. I just as soon use it. It looks much more relaxed to me and sounds much more relaxed to me when we can be in control, but we're relaxed without any stiffness. To me, that's stiff. That's relaxed and controlled. So we'll start maybe just with a few scales. One scale that we should play at least once every day is the chromatic scale. Twice, actually. Once legato, once staccato. From the bottom of the instrument to the top of the instrument. If there's some notes that are not feeling so secure, then you stop and work on those notes. Do some training, actually. We need to, for each note, we need to train the positions of the tongue, the armature, and everything. You need to spend a little time on each note. You don't need to look at the positions necessarily. You're training the body to do what it knows how to do. So all we have to do is think of the note. Imagine the note, that note sounding incredibly beautiful, the most beautiful sound that we can imagine. Let the body do the work. But here we can focus on one note just so the body has a chance to find that optimal place for it. Of course, we're controlling it. So sound, and once you hear the sound, then you recreate the sound. All right, this is chromatic scale. Let's just do a couple, see what happens. Start at the bottom, go as high as you can, breathe when you need to. Yeah, not so bad. Upper register is tricky. Chromatic scale in the high register, it's nice to run it a few times. Again, it's upper register work. Just go as high as you can without pushing and finding the intonation, making the note clear. All right, go play the chromatic scale, bottom of the horn to the top of the horn. If something's a little shaky, work on it a little bit, and then come back. Okay, you back? Yeah. Chromatic scale. Now, same thing. Instead of legato, staccato. You can start anywhere. If your lower register is weak, start in the middle register. Practice and begin your practice, no matter what the exercise or the day is, start where you can play. If your middle register is the strongest and your lower register and upper register are still weak, then start in the middle register and then move down and then up from there, moving from a position of security. This is a good concept in practicing, is always beginning from a position of security. Stay secure and then work your way from there. If you begin at a position of insecurity, then you can't really build your foundation. Practicing will become a lesson in frustration. Chromatic scale staccato. So the upper register, it's hard staccato to nail those notes. It's much easier legato to go higher, isn't it? Okay, legato and staccato, different tempos too. Chromatic scale, that's the basic stuff, right? That's every note. So we're training every note. Then we can move to whatever scale you're working on at the moment, or whatever tonality you're busy working on in the moment. Let's use, for now as a demonstration, D flat major. Yeah, that's a good demonstration. D flat major. Scales and articulations with the metronome. Key of D flat major, the F is in sixth position. Sixth position. Smooth slide technique. Again, the tempo that you can play it. Begin there from a position of security. Same thing in staccato. Play the scales repeating the notes. Again, this is kind of training, and then we can continue moving up. Oh, I should mention that the click is on 2 and 4. 1, 1. Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2. Again, just go as high as you can. If you can't go all the way to root without pushing, then go as high as you can. This is part of range building as well. Always pushing the envelope. Then coming down, same thing. Now the same thing in staccato. So everything is legato and staccato. Staccato is muscle building. It builds the muscle of the tongue. It makes it stronger, gives it more endurance and more control. This is great training, endurance training and muscle building. But again, don't get addicted to it. Just a little bit every day. Repeating each note of the scale 8 times, then we can start to repeat it less and move through the scale that way. Notice F, 6th position. Okay? Or in groups of 3. And then 2. Another one, groups of 2, working it. While working the upper register the same way. So on. Depending on your comfortableness and your feeling of security with each of these scales, you should stay there for a while until it becomes more and more fluent. Again, I remind you to play it at a tempo that you can play it. If this is too fast for you, move it slow, slow, slow. Start at perhaps 60. This is 100 half note, which is 200 quarter notes, relatively fast. I just gave an example of some of the scales, and now exercises we can use to combine articulations, legato, staccato, and scale work, scale and or modal work. I remind you that the metronome is clicking on 2 and 4 because I'm a jazz musician. 1, so it's like that. Key of D flat. These kind of exercises are addicting. Keep everything in proportion, but this is a great way to train. Make sure you're training the most efficient slide positions. The half step rule, music moves a minor second. A half step, the slide moves one position. Works much of the time. Direction takes precedent over distance. But we're looking for this kind of movement always. Relaxed, flexible, in control. The thumb is the captain. After some scales and articulation, then it's time to go play some music. Back to music, maybe take a break. So I'm going to take a break right now. Why don't you take a break? And we'll come back and we'll play some more music. Thanks. Do good work. Bye.